Hi guys, welcome to today's video, and this one is especially for model makers. Let's jump in. So I'm pretty new to the world of model making. In fact, this was a Christmas gift from Mr. Chibi to me, and it took me about 9 months to finish. I'm going to give you a close-up there. It's also got this really cool light there. You can just see at the top, and there's a mirror at the back so that everything is reflected back. It is so highly detailed and intricate, and as I'm an avid reader, I absolutely love it. One thing that I didn't anticipate, however, is just how dusty these would get. So on the top here, I'm trying to show you without anything coming out, we have this really lovely skylight here. And although it has a clear acrylic or perspex inner part, the bit with the actual grill gets so dusty, and this is completely open, obviously so that you can turn the light on and off. However, I can actually turn it on and off from underneath. So I started thinking, yes, you can use compressed air. However, in my experience, all that does is blow the dust further in, and it also knocks loose all of these little tiny elements over here, and the little cup, and these little plant pots and plants as well. And obviously I don't want to destroy my beautiful creation. Now they do actually make cases that can be bespoke to any size, but they are really expensive. And this is definitely going to be a new hobby for me, and I can see the amount that I build quickly building up. I definitely would rather spend the cash on a new kit rather than having to spend pretty much the same for one of these bespoke cases. So I started thinking. I have worked with Paper Cutz Acetate many times in the past, and the great thing about this is not only does it cut cleanly on my Silhouette Cameo, but they also have printable versions. They have 100 microns in both laser and inkjet, and also a slightly thicker 135 microns in inkjet and laser, and you can get these in either A4 or A3. I'm going to drop the links to everything down below so you can check them out for yourself. And a great big thank you to Paper Cutz for sponsoring today's video. So obviously, if they're printable, we are definitely going to make the most of this. I have this cute little side window here, which, unlike the one at the top, there is no cover in the middle. It is completely open amongst all of those little grills there, which means that all the dust gets in. But how cute would it look if I could have a little changeable scene outside the window? So I could switch this out for Christmas, autumn, Halloween, fireworks night, whatever I wanted. So that's something we're going to do today. And I'm also going to show you how to make custom sizes like this. Trial and error has shown me the best way to do it. And I'm also going to create a clear panel for the front so that dust isn't going to get in. So what you're going to need is obviously your model that you're going to be adding the acetate to, some printable acetate in either laser or inkjet, depending on what you want, and in your preferred thickness, a ruler for measuring out your shape on the model, some scrap paper to make sure that we've got all of the sizing correct, and then we're going to need a printer if you plan to use a printable element, and also a cutter. I'm going to be using my Silhouette Cameo. You're also going to need a camera so that you can take a straight-on photo of the shape that you're wanting to cut the acetate for. So let's get started. So the most important thing when you're taking your photo is to try and make sure that you are facing this completely dead on so that you're not tilted in either direction, and that you have the whole space in shot. This is going to help you get an accurate trace and shape once we import to Silhouette. So now that that's done, we're going to hop over to Silhouette and import those images. So we have an A4 document here, and I have started by importing those photos that I took into Silhouette. We're then going to head over to the Shapes panel, and I am going to create a circle, or an oval I should say, that is roughly the same size as the curve at the top. At this stage it doesn't have to be exact, and then I'm going to create a bottom part to that. Then I need to select those two shapes, go over to the weld or modify panel and press weld. Now, if we zoom right in, you can see that we have this weird little ledge here, where obviously the top of the oval didn't meet exactly to the rectangle, but that's fine because we're going to click this node part here, and we're going to get rid of these step nodes here, because we definitely don't need those. And then we're actually going to move the nodes out to match the shape of the window. So you can do this just by clicking and dragging, and then these little handles here can be moved to adjust the curve. You can always hit the undo button or Control and Z if you're on a Windows if it's not quite right. So once we've removed the background image, we can see that that isn't quite as smooth as it could be. So we can delete that node there and then come back in and adjust this one here. So you need to remember that this needs to sit inside where you plan to have your perspex. So if you wanted it to extend to the outer frame bit here, then obviously you would need to move the nodes to there instead. But I'm happy with that. I'm just happy for mine to sit inside there. We're then going to duplicate that by going back to the arrow key and hitting the duplicate. I'm going to move that one off over there and then move this smaller one in, and I'm going to just use the corner arrows just to shrink it down evenly, and then I'm going to use the side ones, and then we're going to go exactly back to the same with the node key, and we are going to just make sure that this all lines up. Okay, and now that we have those two, let's zoom back out, and we need to hop back over to our model and take some measurements. Okay, so we are going to use a ruler just to measure the height and the width. If, like me, and you have got the memory of a goldfish, I would highly suggest using a scrap bit of paper to note them down before we go back over to Silhouette to change them up. So for the smaller one, the recess is about 5, and then the height about 8.4. And then I'm going to take exactly the same measurements on top. And we are 10, 8.4, the width. I'm now going to take these measurements back over to Silhouette and transfer them. Okay, so we can get rid of these images here. We don't need them anymore. And for my larger one, the height is 10. So we're going to select it, then go back up to here and make sure that we have the aspect ratio locked. So that means this padlock here will be closed. And we're going to change the height a bit to 10. And that should drag it down. It's now saying the width is 8.34. which as my measurements were 8.4, that should be okay. And we're going to do exactly the same with the smaller one, and the height of that is 8.4. And that puts the width at 5.2, and I had, 5.02, and I had a width of 5, so that should be okay. Before we waste any of our acetate, we are going to use some scrap paper to just check these measurements, and then we can obviously tweak if needed. So obviously you will need to check your own Silhouette Cameo to see what settings work best for you. For me, because it's just going to be scrap paper and it's about 120 GSM, I'm going to have it at 23, past 1. Speed we can ramp up to 8, and blade depth is free. So I've now cut our shapes out, and I'm just going to check, and that is perfect. As you can see, I'll try and give you a close-up. We have got minor gaps around, but it is a clean shape, and that's going to be perfect with the acetate. And let's just do the top one as well. Because there's no recess for this, it's going to sit on top. So I'm really happy with how that looks too. So we're actually going to head over to Canva now, because I think that this one really could do with a cute little outside scene. So we're going to see what Canva has to offer. Okay, so to make sure we've got a good layout in Canva, I am firstly going to fill these shapes with a different colour, and then I'm just going to take a screenshot, because unless you have Silhouette Premium or Silhouette Business, you can't actually export as a JPEG. So we are going to just take a screenshot, because we just need to make sure that whatever silhouette that we use in Canva, so the design, the scene, is going to fit within this space. And then in Canva, I am just going to create an A6, which is going to be far too big, but we're obviously going to size this down in Silhouette before we print. Then we are going to import the shape that we created a screenshot of. So it doesn't matter that that's all blurry. Obviously, it's because it's been taken as a screenshot and it's not the best quality. But we're going to go over to Elements now, and I'm going to look at a autumn scene. And I would prefer to have a photo version, but you need to be aware that obviously, because we're printing on a clear acetate, this will impact how the different colours show up. So sometimes it's worth creating a couple of these, and we can then have a trial once they're printed out as to which one you'd like to keep. So I quite like this one here. I'm going to send it to the back by going to right click, layer, send to back. And then for this, I'm clicking on the shape that we imported, and I'm going to turn the transparency down with the transparency tool to about 32. I'm just going to move these little sliders in as well, because it will just allow me to play around with the image behind a little easier. So I'm going to see whether or not it's going to be possible to actually make this big enough to fit. And yes, that looks quite cute. So we could definitely have that. So as I mentioned, I'm going to have a few different attempts. So I'm going to duplicate this page, but get rid of that autumn scene. This one's quite nice. Let's send this to back and just have a play around with the size. So now we just need to make sure that the imported shape is being deleted from all of them. And then we're going to download them with a ping and a transparent background, which means that this white bit won't show. And then we're going to open them back up in Silhouette. Okay, so I've imported these images, and there's actually a little trick that we can have here. If we duplicate the shape and then place it on the artwork, and then place it on the image where we want it, then select both of them. If you then go to the modify panel again, you can press intersect, and it will then just put it into the shape itself. But you will need to add this over it again to make sure that it cuts. But this will just save on media so that you're not ending up with lots of overlapping images, especially if you want to create a few different ones. So duplicate again, this little tool at the top here, and then select both of them, center, right click, and group. So we're going to go over to the page setup and make sure that we have A4 selected, which we do, and it's on portrait. We then need to go to registration marks, turn those on. I like to make them nice and long and turn the thickness up, but move the inset. So we're then going to place these all on. And there's one thing that we need to do before we start printing. So I'm going to be using the inkjet acetate at 100 microns, and if we were to just print straight on this, then obviously the Silhouette Cameo here isn't going to pick up the registration marks because it's clear. So I have a little tip for that. Paper Cutz also do some wonderful self-adhesive printable sheets, so we are going to trim some of these down and put them onto the three corners so that the registration marks can print straight onto there. Now with printable acetate, both sides are not exactly the same, so you need to figure out which is the printable side. And the way you do that with the inkjet one is that you breathe on it. But if you breathe on it and it's not visible, then you know that that is the side to be printed on. If you breathe on it and it is visible, you need to flip it. So let's get those adhesive sheets added. So I can't use the acetate fin setting for this because of it needs a craft blade, which I do not have. So I'm going to go to cotton fabric printable, but I'm going to whack it down to about 25. We're going to go 2 passes, and I'm going to put a speed up of 7 and a blade depth of 3. Obviously, you'll need to have a play around with your own cut settings. Okay, so I'm going to very carefully move this so you can see. We need to make sure we are not touching the middle at all. But with some light shining through there, you can just about see these beautiful images. Obviously, you need to be aware that any that need white are not going to show up just as well. But look at these. Now, this is going to need to be left for about an hour. So I'm going to carefully pop this back onto the printer and then just leave it be to dry. So now that this is all dry, I am going to load it onto the cutting mat, just making sure that the corners are stuck down firmly. I don't really want to put my brayer over the middle. And you can see that the cutting machine should be easily able to read all the registration marks now. So we now have all of our shapes cut out. We've got a front panel here, and then obviously the little windows. I've done some different variations. So as you can see, when they're on the white background, they look crisp and vibrant. But because I do not have a white printer, there is obviously no white that is in the print itself. So you need to be mindful of this when you are picking your images to go in the window. This one here isn't too bad at all because there's not too much sky or anything like that. And I also did a spooky Halloween one as it's October, and I quite like this one actually. It just kind of looks a bit like a foggy night, and then there's a little wee ghosty down there. So now I'm going to show you how to apply these to your model. Obviously every single model is going to be a bit different, but this is just the method I'm going to use for mine. I've actually got some of this 2mm double-sided tape left over from my model making. If you don't, then you can pick some up on Amazon. Now, you don't have to secure your tape panels in, especially if it's something that you believe you're going to be switching in and out. Mine is going to be in a high traffic area, and so I just want to make sure that it's extra secure. Okay, we're going to start with the skylight just because it's going to be the easiest to pop on. And I have obviously just cut this out. The one tip I will say is do not touch the middle, because if you get any dust or fingerprints in, then it's going to be highly visible once you've applied it and they might be trapped. I can see there's a tiny bit of dust there. So I'm just going to try and wipe that out. Now, obviously, because we checked with the paper, we know this is a good fit. So I am going to go straight ahead and just apply the tape just to a few small areas. Be mindful that although this is obviously clear, it is still going to be visible. So you want to make sure that you have got a clean finish and application. And I'm not applying too much pressure because I don't want to go through the skylight. Now, obviously, there is already a printed acetate in here. The reason I'm applying this to the top is because of these little window mullions, I think it's called, are complete dust magnets, and it is a bit of a pain having to try and get in there every week to get the dust out. So with this all sealed up, then it means we are going to have a much better seal, and I can just easily wipe the dust off instead. So obviously I'm going to use my hand from underneath just to try and support as I'm putting down pressure here. If you apply a bit firmer to where the tape is, it helps it be less visible. And there we go. Obviously you can see the small areas where they are, but that doesn't bother me. It's definitely worth the trade-off in terms of dust. Now it's now time to put on the front panel, and this is a bit trickier. Now, because I need to be able to get access to the wiring, just in case anything goes wrong, then I'm not going to seal this. But at first, it's going to look like it's not going to fit as I roll it into the front, and I am then going to need to kind of tweak it from the side window to make sure that everything is properly in place. Okay, and eventually it will pop in. Now at the bottom here, I'm not sure if you can see, but there is a little join where part of the model meets the floor. I am going to do my best to try and get this to just seat in ever so slightly. Perfect. Okay, so now you can see it from the front, or I should say you can barely see it from the front. And that was the idea. I wanted a tight fit. And now we're left with this remaining window here. Now, the way my model works is this is just supposed to seat in like so, which obviously it's stable enough. I haven't lost it. Nothing's come out. But the good thing is that I can easily pop this out as needed to apply some different windows. So with the same method that we used on the roof, we are now going to apply a nice autumn scene. Now, because I plan to change this out regularly, I am definitely not applying lots of double-sided tape. And then it is just a case of very carefully popping my window back in. So now when you are peeking from the other side, you can see a lovely pumpkin patch, which you can't, but I'm going to go in for a closer look so you can. So ignoring the reflections on the front panel, you should be able to just about see some cute little pumpkins in there. And obviously you don't have to have the printed acetate, it just adds a nice touch. I think that having stained glass window effects like this, let me see if I can turn the light on from the bottom, there we go, so you can see the definition there, works much better. So I am so pleased with how this has turned out. I'm just going to turn it there so you can just see my lovely printed window there, and obviously the stained glass on the top as well. And having this all completely sealed in is going to be a game changer, because I was getting so frustrated with little bits of dust and debris were kind of blowing in, and Boo Bear likes to leave her fur everywhere in the lounge, especially when she gets excited and is wagging that tail close to the little unit that this sits on. But now it's perfect, and as I said, we've got that light there, but luckily for me I can access it from the bottom, so even though the touch button's inside, it's still perfectly fine. So what do you think? If you are a model maker, I would love to know what is your favourite model to make, and maybe even suggest some kits for me in the comment box down below. Likewise, if you have any comments or questions, then just leave them there as well, and I will be sure to get back to you. Don't forget, for any school people that we have out there, teachers, teaching assistants, school admin, receptionists, anything like that, Paper Cutz have so many different items that can really bring your school displays to life. Just make sure that you check out the links in the description box down below. If you've enjoyed this video today, please hit that like button. It really does help let YouTube know that people are enjoying my content. Share it with some model making friends, and don't forget to tune in next Friday for my next video. It's going to be a spooky Halloween one. I can't wait to see you then. Bye!